Hi, welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois. I'm here with Matt Dietrich, and we want to talk to you this week about all the news that's been in the news this week about constitutional amendments and ballot questions pertaining to them on the November election.
Correct.
So we had a lot of talk. This week is the deadline, or May 4th coming up is the deadline to get your bid in to get things on the ballot.
Right.
Whether you do it through the legislative process or the citizen-initiated process.
Right.
And so legislators this week considered pushing through a question asking voters if they wanted to move to a progressive tax instead of a flat tax. And it would require 3/5 majority of both the Senate and the House. Senator Don Harmon had some language in the legislature to do that, and was saying he was going to call it for a vote, but it ended up that there were not enough votes in the House to have approved it, and so he strategically decided not to call it for a vote, because then he would have put all of his Senate colleagues out there, in essence, taking a stand on voting for what could very easily be described as a tax increase for a lot of people.
And the real problem was that this year, we already know that the Democrats in the House and the Senate are probably going to be voting to make permanent the 2011 tax increase that made the personal income tax rate 5%. It's supposed to fall to 3.75% at the end of the year. Governor Quinn said in his budget address that he does not want that to happen. He says that anybody who thinks the state can get by while letting that happen is not telling the truth. So we know that there's going to be a big push for that. We've heard it coming out of the legislature. This was not the right time for Senator Harmon, I don't think, to have his chamber, his members take one vote on a bill that probably would die in the House anyway, and then have to come right back in a few more weeks to vote on another thing that's going to be considered pretty controversial, because this was sold in 2011 as temporary. Repeatedly. It was repeated over and over again in 2011 that this is only a temporary tax, going to get us over the hump, get our bills paid, get the pensions made whole. Then we go forward in 2015 back to 3.75, and now it's looking like that's not going to happen.
So we will not see on our ballot in November a question about a progressive tax,
no.
But it may very well come back. It has to go on a ballot because it's changing the Constitution, which calls for a flat tax rate, and so the next opportunity for it to come back would be November of 2016.
Which means that they would have to get something passed by
May
whatever, I don't know what the date is, May 4th, May 6th of 2016.
Because it's got to be 6 months, out there for 6 months.
So I would expect a push for this to come back when the new General Assembly is seated in next January.
Okay. Two other constitutional amendments. There are two questions on the ballot already, guaranteed. One deals with voting rights, the other deals with crime victims' rights. But then there are two other citizen-initiated attempts to get questions on the ballot. One, which we've talked to you about a lot over the years, that we heartily endorse, and that is the Yes for Independent Maps redistricting reform. And the other is an effort funded by and backed mainly by the Republican candidate for governor, Bruce Rauner, which calls for term limits on legislators, not on statewide officers, but legislators. And both of those campaigns delivered their petitions to Springfield this week in an attempt to get on the ballot. And before they even got to Springfield, what happened?
Well, allies and associates of House Speaker Michael Madigan arrived in Cook County Circuit Court and filed a lawsuit to prevent either one of them from appearing on the November ballot. And we have the lawsuit posted at rebootillinois.com. But the gist of it is that both of these proposals violate the very narrow standard that the Illinois Constitution sets for citizen initiatives to change the Constitution. You can't just gather signatures and change, say, the form of the Illinois income tax. The only thing that the Constitution allows you to change by citizen initiative is the structure and procedure of the General Assembly. It's a very limited clause in the Constitution. The lawsuit, which is aimed at both the term limits and the redistricting reform efforts, the lawsuit says that they go well beyond the structure and procedure of the legislature. Now, who knows how the court will rule on those. In 1994, then Treasurer Pat Quinn collected several 100,000 signatures, which you have to do in order to get his own term limits bill.
Which he dubbed 8 is enough.
8 is enough is what he called it.
8 years.
And the Illinois Supreme Court at the time said that it did not abide by the structural and procedural standard of the Constitution, so it did not make it onto the ballot.
Ultimately, if this gets to the Illinois Supreme Court, because everything is political, that's a Democratic-led court. And quite a few of the people on that court are close to Speaker Madigan.
Correct.
So we'll see how that all develops in the months ahead. We're certainly going to be paying a lot of attention to it.
And the court is involved also, don't forget, they've got the pension reform lawsuit in front of them as well. So we're going to be hearing and seeing a lot of the Illinois Supreme Court over the next few months.
Yep. So stay tuned, stay informed, and thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another edition of Only in Illinois.